In terms of the political, I'm sure the president was also aware of this because he is also someone who is one of the country's political heavyweights.
Indeed.
So he put it in his speech yesterday in his New Year address that electioneering will be a key issue for 2018. But of course, that Bloomberg report this morning also said that one of the key issues for Nigeria, and speaking to Nigeria specifically in that online report by Bloomberg, was that, look, if the economic managers and the policy masters, country's political masters, leave economy unattended and focus more on winning primaries and all of that, that could have very serious consequences for us.
That's a good point. And another thing to note is that during political cycles, we have observed that frontier markets economic policy makers, they typically adopt a very short-term approach to economic policy making. So instead of embracing much more important structural reforms that will be important for long-term growth, but that are very, very painful, you know, they would rather take a very short-term perspective and delay very important reforms. A very important example is what is happening regarding the energy sector in Nigeria today. You know, we are seeing shortage of petroleum products in the downstream sector. And a major reason for that is the fact that we still don't have a deregulated market yet. So now, this is a very important reform, but embarking on the regulation of the downstream oil and gas sector right now will lead to increase in petroleum products prices, which the federal government might not be, you know, willing to allow to happen towards the election cycles. You know, so I'm sure you've read this yesterday or 2 days ago. Saudi Arabia did an increase in petrol prices as well as the power tariff.
Yeah,
so we need to see power tariff go up to encourage investment in the sector. We need to see a proper deregulation of the downstream oil and gas sector. But these two major reforms, they are very unpopular.
And they are intertwined.
They are intertwined in there.
Petrol and power, they form the entire energy crux for every conversation we're having.
Correct.
But these are very volatile and very highly inflammable conversation when it comes to that. Nobody wants to touch that in a year when you want a return to power or stay in power or get elected for the first time.
And that leads us to our second major key risk for the market in 2018, policy-induced volatility. There are some major structural reforms that needs to happen, right, in 2018 to avoid Nigeria going back into recession. But with the political, you know, cycle gradually approaching, we do not expect those things to happen, and they're going to have long-term consequences.
Give me one. Mention one.
Energy sector, the major one which I've mentioned, and the second one is the harmonization of rates in the FX markets. Already, the CBN has taken a very important step by trying to allow for transparency, you know, in the investors and exporters window. But we are still seeing the official peg, you know, remaining unchanged from 305, and this is still a very significant spread. And even at the 305 official peg, the government is still having to pay subsidy on petroleum products importation. You know, so I think for 2018, we're likely not going to see that important harmonization because, like I mentioned, it's still going to have a feedback on petroleum products prices.
Okay, we'll have more time on the show to still break this down a little bit further. But if we go back to the political cycle and on the electoral promises, the president made lengthy promises yesterday.
Indeed, indeed.
Yes, I think it's about almost how many pages of a speech he delivered. It was very long on promises, especially road, rail, and power. So if we look at the electoral cycle, do you think the president and his team will be able to deliver on very critical infrastructure that they've set himself up against the wall, as it were, in 2018 into 2019? Of course, some of the rail will have to be delivered in 2019, but everyone will be looking forward to see some good progress reports by the end of this year.
Yeah, definitely. Like you mentioned, for the President's New Year speech, he made some remarks regarding the infrastructure plan for the federal government, talking about the delivery of major rail infrastructure, roads, as well as power as well. And these are all very positive. In 2018, there'll probably be more than 1,000 megawatts of power added to the generation capacity of Nigeria, coming from Azura, coming from Kaduna, coming from our farm, etc. So these are very, very important infrastructure projects. Also, we are seeing some major rail infrastructure Kaduna to Lagos, the Abuja City Light Rail projects, inception of the Lagos-Calabar routes, as well as the Port Harcourt to Kano route as well. So these are very important infrastructure that federal government is trying to deliver on. But if you look at the funding structure for the infrastructure projects and the fact that the deficit the country is facing on infrastructure is so massive that all these, deficit-funded projects might not be able to bridge it significantly. There is still a need for the federal government to make reforms regarding pricing, regarding taxes, and regarding the overall economic framework so as to enable private capital to come in to fund these projects.
I was just about to say that, and then I watched a similar presentation by the Indian finance minister a few weeks ago about their own road and rail a project massively over the years and what they intend to do. And I saw in that presentation, which was very lengthy, on satellite television, about where the private sector comes in, how much the government is bringing in, how much the private sector is bringing in, what incentives the private sector gets for joining hands with the government to build those infrastructure. I'm waiting to see a bit of that. But we've seen some of the what's been mentioned about whether there will be tax incentive also for building roads in Nigeria. But do you think overall on the president's speech, the markets have something to take away from there?
Yes, we do.
Yes, we do. You're going to explain that. You're going to explain that when we come back after the break. Omotola Abimbola from Afrinvest. Let's get back to you after the break.